Imagine dropping a group of highly capable people onto a totally blank map. Almost immediately, you would see a burst of survival energy. They would figure out how to build shelter, forge tools, and construct some genuinely impressive things. But if you asked that same group to build a society that survives its own success, most of them would fail. We tend to imagine civilization as a postcard. Massive skylines, intricate architecture, maybe a dramatic flag blowing in the wind. A tribe can survive on relationships and good aesthetics. A durable civilization has to survive on structure. When we design institutions for citizens who are perfectly rational and selfless, we create a system that cannot handle the reality of human ego, fear, or laziness. Blueprints for a perfect society tend to shatter the moment they encounter a real person having a bad Tuesday. This diagram shows what actually makes a society durable. On one side, you have the engineer, optimizing for strict mechanical efficiency. On the other side, the artist, building shared meaning and belonging. Neither works alone, but when you lock them together, they generate cheap trust. And high-trust societies move incredibly fast because they don't have to burn all their energy constantly guarding against each other. Building a world that lasts means you stop trying to fix human nature and start designing around it. You create defaults, rituals, and incentives that help imperfect people coordinate their survival and behavior under ordinary, everyday stress. At the civilizational level, wealth is productive capacity. A reliable surplus of food, energy, and materials buys society free time to specialize. Only when people stop worrying about daily survival can they become full-time architects, teachers, or machinists. Keeping that surplus stable relies entirely on systems that most people completely ignore until they break. You cannot build thriving public life or stunning architecture without a massive, entirely unglamorous logistical backbone. Beneath a city are load-bearing subsystems, water routing in blue, power grids in yellow, and waste management in brown. They push surplus upward to keep the world alive, but they inevitably degrade. Maintenance is the society's immune system, intercepting damage before it cascades. Without this baseline physical stability, every ounce of your cultural or intellectual ambition hits an immediate, unbreakable ceiling. You have to secure the foundation before you can build the sky. Once physical survival is locked in, the challenge shifts to organizing human behavior. People learn how to behave from physical spaces far faster than from any set of laws. The layout of a transit system or a public square silently dictates who interacts, how trade flows, and how comfortable strangers feel. You can see it in this blueprint. By embedding recurring cultural motifs and shared stories directly into the paving stones and gathering zones, the architecture becomes ideology in material form. It teaches citizens what the society values, organically enforcing cooperation without needing constant policing. Money is a trust tool. It creates a web of exchange, letting isolated strangers safely trade specialized skills. But unbounded, this network is vulnerable. Certain hubs will extract value rather than create it. A healthy civilization deploys strict guardrails to stop predatory behavior. Whether you are designing a physical plaza or a digital payment system, your job is to make trust incredibly cheap. You want cooperation to be a default reflex, rather than something that requires intense moral effort. As this whole system gets more complex, relying on a small handful of brilliant experts becomes a fatal operational bottleneck. A society that wants to last must aggressively archive its failures, document its workflows, and pass that knowledge outward. This requires establishing clear, repeatable paths to mastery. Think of modern equivalents to apprenticeship systems. You need a structured way to take a complete novice and turn them into skilled practitioners, ensuring that critical techniques survive from one generation to the next. This is where artificial intelligence enters as a massive multiplier. AI can accelerate logistical mapping, draft specifications, and simulate structural permutations in seconds. It gives a small group of builders enormous planning bandwidth. But that immense computation speed comes with a strict rule. Human moral judgment must remain upstream of the final decisions. The AI is a co-pilot for exploring options, not a governor meant to enforce them. If a society chooses to delegate its actual understanding to machines, it loses its grip on how its own foundation works. Citizens become dependents on a black box, resulting in a culture that is fragile, reactive, and lost. Scaling up is dangerous. A decision-making process that works beautifully for 50 people will predictably fracture and breed endless bureaucracy the moment you hit 5,000. Growth multiplies complexity, and with that complexity comes a massive distance between the leaders and the daily realities of the citizens. The ultimate stress test for any civilization is how it handles a crisis like this. Can it absorb a massive external shock, a natural disaster, a supply chain collapse, a sudden conflict, without losing its structural integrity? Surviving extreme pressure requires layered governance. Instead of relying on a single, rigid central command that can easily shatter, you decentralize your defense. You empower a fractal network of local hubs and repair teams that can adapt and sustain themselves under pressure. Hardware and local logistics will only get you so far. The true bulwark against systemic collapse is the emotional resilience of the culture itself. When things go dark, the ingrained habits of trust, the shared stories, and the mutual respect are what actually prevent mass panic. Building a world that endures requires the synthesis of the engineer's flawless mechanics and the artist's profound meaning. When these forces align, civilization becomes a repeatable structure for ongoing survival.